to the long-awaited segment, and I say long-awaited, I had to schedule myself, literally, because, the gentleman is so busy for a good reason, good cause. Bishop Roger Ball's inaugural book, The Ties That Binds and Bruise, covers many of the issues that bind and bruise families today, from the importance of the extended family to issues of infidelity and recovery. This book is written with our families at the center. Welcome, Bishop Ball.
Thank you very much, my friend, and thank you so much for having me again.
May I just show my book cover right
Please
here?
do, and I'll show mine as well.
So all those of you who will be tuning in, and you've already tuned in, you're cued. I have my copy. What a read it was. Would you like to say hi, as always, to our audience?
Hello, everyone. So good to be with you here this evening. It's certainly a pleasure to join you. I'm excited about the work that you're doing. I'm excited about the work that this book offers to our families. And so a pleasant good evening, and thank you so much for having me.
The Reverend Dr. Roger Ball is an experienced and highly successful clinician, educator, and theologian. By combining all three of these disciplines, he has created The Ties That Bind and Bruise. Without a doubt, this engaging and effective workbook is an essential psychological and spiritual daily guide to achieving successful marriages and nurturing healthy children and families. Once again, welcome.
Thank you.
The topic of the book.
Yes.
I saw you doing some work, and I read a snapshot of what we ought to expect that you posted on Facebook. I read it and I sent a note in the Facebook Messenger and said, I'd like to get my copy.
Sure.
Because I was looking forward to seeing the book. And when I got it in the mail, I said, The Ties That Bind and Bruise. I want to read this book. And I read it. I made notes, but not in the book, because I said I didn't want to mark it up.
Oh, you should mess it up.
I
Just
know.
write all over
I
it.
didn't want to mark it up. But share about the topic of the book.
Right. The title, in some ways, seemed to grab a lot of attention.
Yes.
In some ways, it's the two extremes, right? That's always present with us, both in reality and in potentiality, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we as families, we have the possibilities of, when we are at our best, we are together. We stand strong. We stand taller.
Mm-hmm.
We care for each other. We love each other. We build strong marriages and families, and so that's the ties that bind. And that's a theme that's recurring throughout the text. The ties that bruise are the ties that we see every day, of infidelity, of broken homes, of child abuse, of neglect, of domestic violence, of abandonment, of pain and suffering, of death. And so these two are always with us in reality and in potential. And so I wanted to face those things head on.
Absolutely. We have come to realize that there is a breakdown in our families.
That's right.
The numbers are rising in divorce, which results in broken homes. Children are becoming wayward. They're not too sure where they stand. They're not too sure how to move forward after having had such an experience. Sure. And I know you have been doing quite a bit of series around. People
right.
You've gotten invites.
Sure.
And you've been sharing in a lot of these settings. What has the response been in keeping with your book?
Right. So we've been in a number of places. We've been to St. Kitts. We've been to, I don't want to start calling too many names.
That's fine.
I know this summer and fall we'll be in Turks and Caicos. We'll be in Guyana. We'll be in St. Martin on a leadership conference. And we've been a bunch of places already doing this work. My wife, and by we I mean my wife and I, because I always speak in the collective when I speak of her.
Hello there, Mrs. Ball. How are you?
Yes, and so the response has been
Yes.
that this is desperately needed, because I think in some ways the church has not developed the language acumen to really discuss issues around families, because it's so hush hush, and we just believe that we either just condemn people or we don't talk about things that they're struggling with at all. And so we are really good at putting on our fancy outfits and our suits and our outfit and makeup and whatever else, and we walk out and we look good, but inside we're dying. And so this book really aims at talking about these things. And so wherever we have gone, the response has been tremendous. Tremendous. I mean, I go to places and I break open boxes of books, and in no time they're gone, because people are constantly reaching out, personal stories of what this has meant to them, how it is impacting their families. So, and the thing I really love about this book is that it cuts across discipline, it cuts across faith communities, it cuts across academia, it cuts across the ordinary folks out there who might not be a part of our church, but are very much benefiting from
this book.
Yes.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You're just joining me, 7:38 p.m. The Ties That Bind and Bruise. The author, Roger Ball, his inaugural book, which I believe, can I say sell-off?
Well,
It's a sell-off. It's a sell-off. I was captivated by page 25, An Alcoholic Father. And when I read it, I thought of children with whom I grew up and how that impacted their families. It's either the money wasn't coming home, it's either there was physical abuse, verbal abuse, and eventually it disrupted the family spectrum.
Yeah. If I may say, in fact, I do have another book that will be coming out in the fall, and I tell the story in the book that's coming out about a father who loved God, a father who really was rooted and grounded. In fact, we know that he found favor in the eyes of God, so much so that the evil was so rampant on the earth that God washed away the entire world and saving just him and his family. Well, they went on this boat, this ship, this cruise liner, right? For all this time they floated on the water receded, they stepped out on dry land, he planted a vineyard, he fermented his grape, and he became an alcoholic.
Right.
So much so that he passed out drunk in the bed, naked, and his kids saw him. You know the story of which I speak.
Yes.
Noah. And so their story is our story. And so what we do know is that where there's drug abuse, violence, alcohol, other substances, prescription medication, gambling, all of these kinds of addictions, it consumes you, and it makes the addiction becomes more important than your very family. And so it's impossible for children not to be negatively impacted by these things. In fact, I teach a class at Fordham University on just this. And this semester I'm teaching a class, and I just finished my last class on substance abuse. And the stories that are told, the experiences that are lived, it's just tremendous. It's tremendous. And I think that people sort of operate under the assumption because people are in church that they're not struggling with addiction. Nothing could be further from the truth. Addiction does not know religion.
Let's break this out. Ties, bind, bruise. Starting with ties first. How would you dissect this in context?
Well, ties is the spaces that we gather in, right? It's the relationality. It's the relationship between you and I. It's the relationship between a mother and a father and his sons and daughters, and the space that we create and how we live in that space. So those are the ties, and not all ties are healthy. Some ties are dysfunctional. Some ties are riddled with violence. And so the ties that bind, I am making the case, that are the healthy ones. It's the ones that makes you want to jump out of work when it's 5 o'clock or whenever it is and run home to your family, right? To see your dog and your cat and your sons and your daughters and your whoever you live with, your grandmother, whoever you live with, that you can't wait to turn that key and step into your house. Where the ties that binds are the ties that when you sit down to break bread together at mealtime, you put away the cell phones and you look deep into each other's eyes and says, how was your day?
Wow.
Those are the ties that
This
bind.
sounds like experience.
Well, it better be if I'm going to be teaching and preaching about it.
Absolutely.
And conversely, the ties that bind, are the ties that bruise are the ones that are too often present in our families.
Let's talk about marriages.
Sure.
In your experience, while you're having these lecture series or,
Right.
it's at a conference, what have you, what are some of the challenges that you see that are most common among couples?
Sure. In fact, just this March we did our annual marriage retreat, and we had 90 couples, 90 couples at the retreat. And so part of my partnership with Montefiore is that we're partnered with a local hospital that is also sponsoring a lot of couples. But to the point and to your question, I think that the struggles are oftentimes very similar. People get into relationships and they get married and on love, and they believe that love is enough to carry them. And then all of their baggages and all of their struggles and all of their differences begin to serve as chasms. They begin to separate them.
Right.
And so whether it's issues of communications, whether it's issues of failed expectations, a lot of times we enter these spaces believing that the person is going to be who we thought they would be, even though they never promised, they never presented that. But our own ideas about what love is and how we are to be treated in those relationships oftentimes create great conflict and discomfort to the point where divorce, infidelity, violence, and some of these other things, follows. So, and if I may push the point a little bit further, one of the things that we do know is that successful marriages is not something that's inherent.
Right.
It's skills. So, for example, I could cook. I don't cook very often, but you put me in the kitchen, I will churn out something really good.
Right.
Now, I could go in there now and start cooking, but that skills, it came from somewhere. My mother would buy these big bags of flours and rice, and the meat would be there, and if you're hungry, you simply go and cook. But we had to learn. I watched my mother, watched my sister, watched my brothers, and so I learned to cook. Same thing with marriage, where there's skills of how to, basic skills like listening. Right, so suspending your judgment, suspending your thoughts, and really listen to what the person is saying, and then say things like, basic things like shaking your head. Things like, so what I just heard you said is, you're not angry with me, you're saddened by what I said to you. To repeat back to back. So those are skills that could be taught.
Yes.
And if we teach those skills, marriages would be much better.
Bishop Dr. Roger Ball, he is the author of The Ties That Bind and Bruise. It's his inaugural book. Again, I'm going to whisper, a sell-off. And he is having his interview with me this evening, and I was so impressed with the book. I didn't mark it up, but I have retained everything, and I would like you to do a read for me this evening. I liked page 110.
110.
Starting on your left. 110. Because I think this is a very key area.
Resist the need.
Yes.
Tell me where you want to start.
Right at the first trying.
And this is on resist the need to press for forgiveness. Trying to compel forgiveness is selfish. It is not about what you need. Pressuring your spouse to give something he or she is not yet ready or able to give only causes both of you more hurt. And anyway, being told that you are forgiven does not mean that you are Forgiveness is not a one-time event. It is a process that happens in increments. It's hard to forgive. Remember that the next time that you compel to push, society and faith communities alike have misrepresented the nature and anatomy of forgiveness. We cannot strong-arm people into forgiveness. Forgiveness is forgiveness is more often than not a destination rather than an event. By that I mean, people forgive when they can see a safer future than what they have now, have worked through and made sense of what has happened to them, and finally, they are able to work through a range of emotions associated with events including anger, sadness, shock, loss, so on and so forth.
Yes. Now, would you like to elaborate on this?
Yeah, I know sometimes I get in trouble for these, and I just want to say,
Yes.
I am anything but controversial, right? I am not interested in being that guy that comes on the scene and try to say something shocking that gets everybody. That's right. In fact, I'm rather conservative in my thinking.
Right.
But faith communities, adults, parents have long believed that just saying that I forgive you is all that it is needed. If you have injured someone terribly and they are hurting badly, you might feel better if they say, you know what, I forgive. But the person who's hurting has not even forgiven you. And so it's really a journey. And sometimes even the word I forgive you is not even necessary. You sort of know when you've arrived. What's more important than saying I forgive you is that one, that the behaviors in the first place that caused the injury, for those behaviors to stop. And for you to make amends by doing things like making amends, by saying, by saying I won't do it again, by changing one's behavior, and over time, people will forgive. I do a podcast with the same title, The Ties That Bind and Bruise, about a little boy, I'm a public school administrator who, some kids messed with him. And we brought the kids together and we said, sit down here, you sit here, say you're sorry, etc., etc. The kid said, I'm sorry, and the little boy said, okay. And the little boy went in the cafeteria, and as the other kid was sitting down, he opened a jug of milk, a container of milk, and emptied it on the kid's head that injured him. That kid that we made say, you're forgiven, didn't really mean it.
Not at all.
Didn't really mean it because that person just wasn't there as yet. So stop pressuring people to accept forgiveness. Do the right thing. Change the behavior, and forgiveness will come over time.
In the ideal world, we would like to see a happy marriage, a happy family. And we know that's really just the ideal.
Ideal.
Right?
Yes.
But when our emotions get in the way, a lot of times things are said, things are done, and we just can't seem to get past what you did to me, especially if that conversation was not held and the forgiveness or the offense was not removed.
That's right.
And so at times, you find that things just, there's a trigger and something just pops up.
And I could make some distinctions oftentimes between men and women in this case. Men oftentimes can move on quicker by sweeping it under the rug, by maybe doing something nice, a nice gesture. Whereas our sisters oftentimes really need to have conversations. So we sit down and let's talk. We need to have a conversation, and that's the worst thing for a man. We need to have a conversation. His heart starts racing. He starts doing something nice. He buys ice cream. He buys flowers just to avoid the conversation. And for her, she's like, "Thank you for the ice cream. Thank you for the flowers, but I really need to talk." And he's like, "Why can't I just give you flowers? Because that should be good enough." But different people need to respond differently, and the more you pile things up, the more triggers, the more sore spots, the more the person will, and that's what happens oftentimes. It spirals into something bigger. So a little tiny thing now becomes magnified because all of the other things are behind there and they have not been forgotten.
Yes. what do you think would be the most valuable takeaway for your readers from this?
The most valuable takeaways, I think that life requires a certain degree of balance. There will be good times. We should be there for each other in both good times and bad times. There will be periods of mourning. There will be periods of injuries. We should be able to forgive. I think there should be balance between work and home life. There should be balance between play and work and worship. There should be balance between the level of importance we ascribe to children versus in an intimate relationship. There should be balance between how far we go in a fight, like saying, okay, stop, let's slow down, right? Yes. So I think the book is very much about calling for balance, and that is something that we can build, but it requires skills to do so.
Oh, bother. If you have not yet gotten your copy, we're just wrapping up. I would like you to share how they can get
Sure.
a copy.
The book you could purchase the book on Amazon.com, and also the book will be available on my website at drrogerball.com. drrogerball.com, or also on Amazon.
The Ties That Bind and Bruise. A great read. Congratulations,
thank you,
Dr. Ball, on your inaugural book, and I'm looking forward to another great read.
The next one is going to be explosive.
Off the chain.
It's going to be crazy. That one will be for the single folks and the folks that are not
so
yet.
Can I give a yup to that?
Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me here this evening on From the Author's Zone.
Thank you.
And I look forward to hearing more about the great reviews.
Appreciate you having
from
me.
The Ties That Bind. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interview series this evening with Dr. Roger Ball with The Ties That Bind and Bruise. And remember to run on over to Amazon. Run. And running doesn't take a long time. It's just to reach for your device and to pick it up and just run on to Amazon. And by the way, did I tell you that last evening when I made the post in my WhatsApp broadcast, a friend of mine who resides in Barbados, she said, I would love to read this. And I just took, I just went on Amazon, pull up, and just took a snapshot.
Thank you.
And sent it to her.
Thank you for sharing.
Again, at the touch of a button.
That's why I'm so glad to be here too.
So thank you so much for joining me. Looking forward to talking with you again soon.
As always, it's a pleasure. And you're doing a fantastic work around here. Can I just say that?
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, the show continues. We end at 8 p.m. this evening here inside the zone with Lady D. Denise Gomez. I'd like to acknowledge those of you who stopped by here on our Facebook feed. So I'm looking at Mrs. Ball herself. She says hello. Jerry McDaniel from Jamaica. In the previous interview I had, he asked, what radio station is this? That was his question. He's in Jamaica.
So the folks are listening.
Yes.
I mean, in fact, I'm going to share this right now.
Issachar Levi says hello. Judith Winter says hello.
Issachar Levi is my brother. Judith Winter is like my best friend.
Okay. So
hello, my folks.
They're tracking you here.
Yes.
And just want to say hi to everyone who passed by this evening. Wrapping the show up at 8 o'clock. And want to let you know that if you want to get a copy, he mentioned it before, stop on by Amazon and get your copy today. Again, The Ties That Bind and Bruise. More music for you. Want to say goodbye to all those of you on the Facebook Live, and thank you for stopping by with us this evening.